In the spring of 1940, the world watched with bated breath. After the invasion of Poland in September 1939, an eerie quiet had settled over Western Europe. This period, known as the Phony War, was a time of anxious waiting, where Britain and France faced Germany, but no major land battles were fought. Many believed the coming conflict would be a repeat of the First World War, a long, grinding war of attrition fought from heavily fortified trenches. The French had spent a fortune on the Maginot Line, a string of massive concrete forts along their border with Germany, convinced it would hold back any German assault. They, along with their British allies, felt confident in their defensive strategy and their superior numbers in tanks and artillery. Their entire war plan, Plan Dial, was built around the assumption that Germany would attack through Belgium, just as it had in 1914. On May 10, 1940, the silence was broken. German forces launched their grand offensive, codenamed Fallgelb, or Case Yellow. The Phony War was over, and the real war was beginning with a thunderous roar that would echo through history. The first shocking fact behind Germany's victory was its revolutionary military doctrine, Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This wasn't just about having better tanks, it was a whole new way of thinking about combat. Instead of a broad, slow-moving front line, Blitzkrieg focused on using concentrated spearheads of tanks, or panzer divisions, to smash through a weak point in the enemy's lines. These tanks wouldn't stop to fight pockets of resistance. Instead, they would drive deep into enemy territory, supported by dive bombers, cutting supply lines, sowing chaos, and encircling entire armies. This brings us to the second and perhaps most critical factor, the Ardennes breakthrough. The French High Command considered the Ardennes forest, with its dense woods, steep hills and winding rivers, to be naturally tank-proof. The German plan, conceived by General Erich von Manstein, and known as the Sichelschnitt, or Sickle Cut, made this supposedly impassable forest the main point of their attack. They gambled everything on pushing 7 panzer divisions through the Ardennes. The gamble paid off spectacularly. On May 13th, they crossed the Meuse River at Sedan, a place the French believed was secure. The German engineers worked miracles, building pontoon bridges under fire. Once across the river, the German tanks had open country in front of them and nothing to stop their race to the English Channel. This single daring maneuver completely unhinged the entire Allied defensive plan. The speed of the German advance was breathtaking and utterly disorienting for the Allies. The panzers weren't moving at the speed of infantry, they were moving at the speed of a truck. A brilliant plan is nothing without brilliant leaders to execute it, which leads us to the third shocking fact, the superior competence and initiative of German field commanders. Generals like Heinz Guderian and Erwin Rommel were not just following orders from a distant headquarters, they led from the front, often riding in tanks or armored cars right behind the lead elements of their divisions. This allowed them to make split-second decisions based on the real-time situation on the battlefield. Rommel, commanding the 7th Panzer Division, famously pushed his forces so hard and fast that he often lost contact with his own high command, earning his unit the nickname the Ghost Division. This aggressive, forward-thinking leadership stood in stark contrast to the rigid, top-down command structure of the French army. French generals were often located far behind the front lines in static headquarters, making decisions based on outdated information. Orders were often obsolete by the time they reached the front. This created a fatal delay in decision-making, allowing the fast-moving German panzers to stay one step ahead at every turn. The fourth crucial factor was Germany's effective use of radio communication. Nearly every German tank was equipped with a two-way radio, allowing tank commanders to talk to each other and to their headquarters. This created a fluid and highly coordinated fighting force. A platoon leader could instantly report an enemy anti-tank gun's position, allowing other tanks and supporting aircraft to target it immediately. In contrast, the Allied communication systems were shockingly inadequate. Very few of their tanks had radios, and those that did often couldn't communicate with tanks from other units or with the infantry. The fifth pillar of Germany's success was the overwhelming support of its air force, the Luftwaffe. Blitzkrieg was never just about tanks, it was a combined arms strategy where ground and air forces worked in perfect harmony. The Luftwaffe's primary role was to achieve air superiority, sweeping the skies clear of enemy aircraft. This allowed German ground forces to advance without fear of being attacked from above. But its most terrifying contribution was the Junkers Ju-87, better known as the Stuka dive bomber. These planes, with their distinctive gull wings and terrifying siren-equipped landing gear, acted as flying artillery for the advancing panzers. Whenever a German column encountered a strong point, they could simply radio for air support. Within minutes, squadrons of Stukas would appear overhead. They would peel off one by one, diving almost vertically toward their target, their sirens wailing to create maximum psychological terror. For the Allied soldiers on the ground, who had little in the way of effective anti-aircraft defense, these attacks were a devastating and demoralizing experience. The Stuka became one of the most feared symbols of German military power. The Luftwaffe's role extended beyond just direct support for the army. German bombers targeted key infrastructure far behind the front lines. They bombed railway junctions, bridges, roads, and communication centers, paralyzing the Allied command and control system. This aerial assault created massive bottlenecks, preventing the Allies from shifting reinforcements and supplies to where they were most needed. The sky belonged to the Germans, and they used it to cripple the Allies from the air. The sixth shocking fact is how Germany masterfully neutralized France's greatest strength, the Maginot Line. France had invested billions of francs and immense national pride into this chain of underground fortresses. It was a technological marvel, with subterranean railways, air conditioning, and massive gun turrets. The Germans agreed it was impregnable. The entire German plan was not to attack the Maginot Line head-on, but to simply bypass it entirely. The Maginot Line thus became a psychological and strategic trap. The powerful French divisions stationed on the Maginot Line were among the best equipped, but they were effectively spectators to the main battle. They were facing the wrong way, waiting for an attack that never came, while the German panzers were encircling them from behind. This leads directly to the seventh and final factor. The Allied forces were spread too thin and committed to the wrong plan. When the Germans invaded on May 10th, the Allies executed their plan perfectly, rushing their best mobile units northward to meet them. This played directly into German hands. It was a strategic feint on a massive scale. The German Army Group B that invaded Belgium was strong enough to be convincing, but the real knockout blow was being delivered by Army Group A through the Ardennes. By the time the Allies realized their mistake, it was too late. This strategic blunder led directly to the evacuation at Dunkirk, where hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers were rescued, but had to leave behind all of their heavy equipment, tanks, artillery, and transport. In conclusion, the stunning German victory in the Battle of France was not the result of a single silver bullet, but the culmination of 7 interconnected factors that created a perfect storm of military success. It was a triumph of revolutionary ideas over outdated traditions. Germany's adoption of the Blitzkrieg doctrine, a philosophy of warfare based on speed, shock, and encirclement, provided the strategic framework for victory. This bold plan was executed flawlessly thanks to a superior command and control system. Aggressive and decisive German commanders like Guderian and Rommel led from the front, while the widespread use of radios in their tanks created a level of coordination and flexibility that the French could not hope to match. Supporting this ground assault was the Luftwaffe, which dominated the skies. Through terrifying Stuka dive bomber attacks and strategic bombing of infrastructure, the German Air Force paralyzed and demoralized the Allied forces. Finally, the Germans masterfully exploited the strategic weaknesses of their opponents. They sidestepped the mighty Maginot Line, turning France's greatest strength into an irrelevant concrete tomb. This, combined with the successful feint into Belgium, lured the best Allied armies into a trap. The fall of France in just 6 weeks was a watershed moment in military history. It demonstrated that a numerically inferior force equipped with a revolutionary doctrine, superior leadership, and modern technology could defeat a larger, more powerful foe that was still clinging to the concepts of the last war. The victory was a testament to the power of speed, surprise, and combined arms warfare.